There's a certain magic at a first night. For the audience arriving at the foyer, a sense of occasion, a growing excitement. And it's the same for the stars as they arrive for the evening's performance. For Helen Watts, the scene could be Vienna, Salzburg or Milan. Instead, it happens to be Cardiff and the opening of another opera season.
Good evening. Very well, Miss Watts. Good luck for the evening.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
But today we've come further west, to the old county town of Pembrokeshire, to the days when Helen was a pupil at this Haverfordwest school, to the beginnings of her interest in music. She was to go on to become one of Britain's most travelled and oft-recorded contraltos, honoured in 1978 with a CBE for services to music. A clear, cold morning in Pembrokeshire, a blue sky, Helen. Do you remember lots of mornings like this when you were growing up?
Yes, I think so. And particularly being so high here. Somehow in Haverfordwest there are so many high views. And we had a wonderful one from the attic of our house in Market Street. Very much like this. And I can remember mornings like this, being up there.
And the house was a two-purpose place, really. You lived over the shop.
That's right. My father was a chemist, and we lived over the shop till I was about 9 or 10, I think.
It seems to me that chemists in those days, when I was growing up too, their shop windows were fairylands of wonderful bottles and vases and so on. Was your shop like that?
Oh, very much so. Isn't it a pity we lost that? It was very exciting, I found, a chemist shop. I spent a lot of time down there watching my father dispensing, and it still remains, all those smells of all the different things, you know, still remains with me.
Was this a comfortable old town to grow up in? Nice?
Lovely. Lots of character. And, mind you, I think when you're young, you take things for granted. So now, as I'm getting older, I'm finding much more interest in the town. It must have been a wonderful wonderfully interesting town, especially when it was such a busy, thriving port so many years ago. But of course, when you're young, you don't take any notice of that. You just accept what's there.
A brisk little walk to school for a 10-year-old, and then here it is. Why Tasker's School?
Founded by Mrs. Mary Tasker. I think she was a member of a fairly wealthy local family. A good deal before 1890, though, when that building was built. And it was for boys and girls, I think, at that time.
And then it became girls only.
Girls only, yes.
Well, these buildings across the road also played an important part in your school days. A pity now to see that they appear to be derelict, corrugated iron, boarded up.
Yes, terrible state. Now, that top floor was a classroom, and I can remember having biology lessons there. And below it was a hall which I think must have been used generally for certain functions by the town. And I can remember singing there at a little do, and I sang my curly-headed babby, which I think my friends will probably remember.
Yes, I think your friends also remember that you used to black up and give it the work.
I don't remember that at all.
And then to join the other girls in assembly or gym, you had to cross the road again.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, how about that? Your face says it all, really. It must be very, very different.
Very different. I can really hardly believe it.
The point is that its usage has changed. This isn't Tasker School anymore, it's a youth club. But you must remember some very august academic occasions here.
Well, this was our assembly hall, so the morning prayers and the hymn singing went on here.
Did you enjoy the hymn singing?
Yes, anything to do with music I enjoyed. Mm.
There's a point about scale when one goes back. I wonder if the room seems smaller to you.
Very much smaller, that's perfectly true. I can hardly believe it. It seemed to me to be very immense when I was here.
Not only in assembly, but also on another important day, the annual Eisteddfod.
That's right, yes. There was quite a competitive thing we had every year. I used to enjoy that, try my hand at various things.
Try your hand at Welsh too, presumably?
Well, I can't actually remember that I tried any of the... I suppose we did Welsh poems and things like that. I wish that I'd learned Welsh, because both my parents speak it, but... and my father was the only Welsh-speaking chemist in the town at that time, so a lot of the country people came in to see him. I wish I'd learned it, but it's a bit late in the day now, I'm afraid.
Well, looking upwards at the fine beams, they're a reminder of the other purpose to which the room was put.
Yes, it was our gym, of course. So we had the climbing ropes and parallel bars all around, and it was one of my favorite lessons.
Oh, were you good at it as well?
Yes, I was quite good. Mm.
Mary Tasker still looks down in effigy on Haverfordwest schoolgirls and boys, but no longer on the old Tower Hill buildings. In 1962, the school moved to a site on the edge of town, and 5 years ago, it became part of a new comprehensive Tasker Milward School, whose headmaster is Glyn Worthington. Headmaster, one of the school's most distinguished former pupils.
Helen Watts, welcome to Tasker Milward School.
Thank you. A very different school to the one I remember.
Indeed, it's much larger than the one you went to.
Yes, how many pupils have you got here now?
We've got something like 1,070 pupils.
I think we were about 250 when I was here.
Yes, indeed. We do many things now that weren't on offer in the Tasker School as you knew.
I'm sure you do. And there is one subject I'd like to know a little more about.
Oh, yes. I wonder what that one is.
Right, Form 3. Let's have a look at March Stock, men. When you turn to the music, please get your instruments ready. Nice and strong from the start. 1, 2. Stop there now.
Paul Williams is head of music here, and Paul, Helen Watts especially asked to be brought to this lesson because there are things about music in the schools these days which interest you.
Yes, because it's quite different. I wasn't taught anything but class singing when I was at school. Now this is the third form.
Yes, this is Form 3, a cross-section of all the Forms 3. There are 7 Forms 3, and this is the top set.
Uh-huh. And can they choose the instruments they play?
Well, up to a point, yes. Many of them start playing in Form 1 when they come to the school for the first time, but some have their own instruments, of course. But what happens is they have lessons with the peripatetic music staff that visit the school once or twice a week.
Yes, oh, that's great. They have basic harmony lessons, do they?
Well, within the classroom situation, yes, when they get to about Form 3, towards the end of the year, to prepare them for O-level,
yes.
in this particular case.
Yes.
Yes.
And they can all sight read, because this is something I couldn't do when I was at school.
Well, I would say that in this class, 90% of the class can sight read. This is because of the tuition they get.
Yes, well, that's a good start. I think
Yes.
makes your life a bit easier.
Oh, a lot easier when it comes to the school orchestra, certainly.
Yes, and you've got a good orchestra here.
Yes, the orchestra is about 75 strong, and we play everything from Bach to the Beatles, so...
Well, such a contrast and such a broad-based orchestra suggests to me that there must be some real talent here in the school. Who have you got?
Well, we've got a number of talented players, but I think two in particular stand out. They are Catherine Wilshaw in Form 7, who plays viola with the National Youth Orchestra of Great Britain, last year anyway, and this year with the National Welsh Youth Orchestra. And, of course, we've got a very talented pianist, Roger Owens.
Talent to be encouraged, isn't it?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, feeling a wonderful rhythm and a nice flow of thought right through the end, I thought.
Yes.
What have you got in mind for his future?
Well, Roger, I think, would like to make a career with music, and certainly in the field of piano playing. Yes. Of course, he realises that the competition in London especially, which is probably the centre of musical activity in the world, is tremendously strong.
Yes.
And you really have to be on his mettle to make a success of the piano.
Yes, that's true, but if he wants to do it, then he must have a go at it,
I think so,
very
yes.
important.
Yes, he must believe in himself.
Yes.
Yes.
And what about singing in the school? Have you...
Yes, well, we've 3 choirs in the school, a junior girls' choir, a senior girls' choir, and a senior mixed choir. And Miss Williams is in charge of the girls' choirs, and they've been very successful this year. And they've competed in a number of competitions. Yeah. And they've won a number of localised Eisteddfodau, and although they didn't win the largest competition that they entered, they did very well indeed.
I really enjoyed that, girls. Thank you so much. And it's lovely to see you doing it without the score in a very professional manner. And I can see that you've got a very good relationship with your conductor, Janice Williams. Janice, tell me, how long have you been rehearsing this?
This particular piece we've been rehearsing this term, since September, actually. Yes.
You must find it very rewarding when you get the results you've been looking for after all your hard work.
Very much so. Very much so. They're an excellent choir, I must confess.
Have you been rehearsing it for any particular reason?
Yes, we're preparing actually for the Christmas concert.
Well, I wish you every luck in the world for it.
Thank you very much indeed.
Well, you probably recognise some of the young faces here. We've just been hearing from them in the choir, and they have been joined by some of their fellow pupils in the 6th and 7th forms, Helen. They have a 7th form these days, apparently, which we didn't have in our time, did we? And I know they've got some points they want to put to you. Perhaps you've got some you want to put to them. Beginning with Janet.
Helen, when you were a schoolgirl in Taskers, who, apart from your parents, encouraged you, influenced your choice in music more than anybody else?
Well, I think it would probably be the man that I had piano lessons from. He was called a Mr. Bishop. And I think it would be true to say that he didn't really teach me very much about the technique of piano playing, but he did one wonderful thing for me, and that was made me love music. And that is very, very important. And I can honestly say that after all these years in the profession, I still do love music.
Did you ever consider going into any other career besides music?
Oh yes, I became a musician, became a singer completely by accident, really, although I loved music and always wanted to sing. I went away to school after I left Tasker, and then I wanted to be a physiotherapist. But I've told this story quite often, I think. At that time, the hospitals would only take, you had to be 18, you see, and I was 17 and a half or something when I left school. And I think really my father thought he really couldn't stand having me home for a whole year. I'd better do something for that year, you see. So I got packed off to the Royal Academy of Music. And after the first term, I knew that that was what I wanted. And so I stayed there.
Helen, I believe you have worked with such conductors as Karajan and Schulte. Did you enjoy working with them?
Oh, marvellous. Yes, that really is a tremendous experience. And you learn so much from them. I've been very, very lucky in that way. Schulte in particular, I've done a great deal with, and that means also that I've worked with some of the finest orchestras in the world. And that is a very humbling experience in many ways, but wonderfully rewarding.
In the case of a soloist working with a conductor and an orchestra or an instrument involved as well, does the conductor have to defer to you?
Well, you will find that the finest conductors can get their own way without actually making you feel that you're doing what they want. But on the other hand, they will also listen and be very understanding to your reading of the piece or the song or whatever.
Do you think young people's attitude towards music has changed nowadays from what it was in your day?
Yes, I'm sure. For starters, you hear a lot more music of every kind, from classic to pop. And I mean, there wasn't any television. We had a gramophone at home. I think for a long time it was one of those things, you know. And so it was the radio or the gramophone, whatever records we had. The first concert I can actually remember going to was of a Sion St. Mary's Church, which impressed me greatly. But now I think you've got so many things to choose from. Now, what kind of music do you like?
Well, I play guitar in a local pop band.
Aha.
We're trying to break out that way.
I see. Do you want to go into the profession?
Yes, I'd love to. It's very difficult.
Oh, it's difficult in any form of music, but if you want to do it, you've got to have a go and be determined and be dedicated too, really.
I said, no bridge, everybody down there. No bridge, for we want to do it now. Across the hill and the English land, 54 years, he's a good old worker and a good old man. 54 years, he's more so hard in our legs till we have the collar tail. Every inch of the way from Albany to
Well, a school, Helen, any school, somehow would seem naked without a choir, wouldn't it?
Oh, it would, yes. It's given me an enormous pleasure to hear them today. I do get a great feeling of excitement when I see young people enjoying music, because it's such a very important part of life, and I think will stand them in good stead later on.
Has this trip back to Haverfordwest brought you equal pleasure?
Oh, yes. I love coming back here, and to have been felt part of the old school again. That's been very, very nice.
And your school days, were they, on reflection, the happiest days?
It's hard to answer, because I think I've been lucky and I've had a very happy life, but I certainly had a wonderfully happy childhood, and that means that Taskers must have been part of that. So I shall have very happy memories of those days.